Welcome back to Made Up of Wires, where we need to decompile why I'm wearing a collared shirt. Or just talk about Symphony of the Night. That's fine too. We are going to be decompiling Symphony of the Night. We're still working on the clock tower. A bunch of stuff happened between the last stream and now. And so I'll go over some of the things that have changed. Sometimes things kind of, you know, they're just moving along, kind of plotting, and then all of a sudden the world changes right out from under you. And that's what happened this weekend. Maybe not quite that extreme, but we'll talk about some of those changes. You can go to soten.z.dev and join us in Discord. We're talking about a bunch of stuff. Find a link to all the source code that me and many other people are contributing to this decompilation project. All the source code that we decompile has to compile back to exactly what was on the disk that shipped the game. And we're working on a couple different versions, the PlayStation version for the US, PSP version for EU. And you can find it all there. And then Discord, we're chatting about things that we find, problems that we have. An interesting one from Zyinamo, I don't know if it was ever figured out. We could look at that. We talk about register swaps quite a bit and how to fix variables being assigned to certain registers. There was a function over the weekend that was eluding even the brightest of minds on this project. There is a different error that I want to take care of first. I should actually write all the things down because I'm already forgetting all the things that I want to talk about today. A little late. Sorry about that. But we'll get going. Let me just note some of these things down because I do think that we have some things to talk about. So I want to talk about register swaps. I want to talk about PSP main. This is kind of a big one, and this is we've looked at it before on this stream. There's a few things here that I think are going to be interesting, not just for the PSP, but potentially for the Saturn and Xbox 360 versions as well. What did I break over the weekend? I don't think I broke anything, but build all is in, and we talked about that a little bit last week. Is there anything else worth talking about? We'll get into NZ1. So before any of that, though, what I'd like to do is look at an error and see if we can do something about it. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. We're going to see. There's a couple things. I did look into this a little bit. Controversy of the weekend was, big news for the Symphony of the Night project is there is now main.psp. And this is important because this contains several functions that Konami stubbed out to get the PlayStation code working on the PSP. We have all the game code itself. It was compiled basically using the PSP SDK, but I should say using the PSP compilers, but Symphony of the Night is very much written against the PlayStation 1 SDK. And so in order for that to work, there is a translation layer that implements a lot of the PlayStation 1 functions as PSP functions, and they exist in ps.elf, but we're now calling main.psp. And so eventually, as we go through this, we'll get to see some of the Konami implementations of the PlayStation 1 library, or SDK, which is, I think, really neat. We have a couple projects that are ongoing to decompile the PlayStation 1 SDK, as well as provide a compatibility layer to recompile this code for other architectures. And this will all help with that, which I think is super cool. So for portability reasons, this is not necessarily going to be Symphony of the Night specific, but it is kind of foundational for other projects. So that's one of them. And this happened, there was a PR put out maybe Wednesday or Thursday, and I had a comment on there. Oh yeah, I looked at that, and it was mostly what seemed to be an exploratory PR. Hey Nate, good to have you back. And it turned out that a day and a half later, it was checked in, and now it's part of the build, which is totally sweet. There's a lot of functions though in this module, and so some of the instructions here, it looks like this is compiled with GCC, maybe? We'll find out. Maybe not. Parts of it definitely are, because parts of it are the PSP SDK. Maybe not. We'll see. But some tooling needed to be written to do some translation, because Allegrix AS, which is the PSP assembler, didn't support some instructions that are in this. And the PSP dev project, they have PSP AS, and PSP AS is a modern GCC version with the necessary patches from the Allegrix MIPS processor, and that actually handled them fine. I had looked at that in the past. But Dynamo went a slightly different way, which was to rewrite the assembly in such a way that it just looks like binary blobs to the assembler, and that works as well. I think it'd be nice to get the PSP AS integrated at some point. I don't know when that'll be. We'll see. But in that discussion, I made the claim that Python was slow, and then I brought receipts, and unfortunately, a bunch of our build is slow, and I think it's because of Python. Python's just slow. I've looked into basically a third of our build from a clean state is taken up by Splat, and SPIM integrated in there. So Splat is used for splitting, SPIM is the disassembler, and a lot of the slowness, or a lot of the clock time that's taken, is just because it's Python. Yuck. And I'm happy to say that people don't like hearing that. People like Python as a language. I don't particularly care for it as a language, but it's slow, and it's great for getting things done fast, like building a new idea, exploring a new program, and getting something out quickly. But now for like critical infrastructure, for something that is in the critical path for building, it's a little slow. And so I know SPIM has a fork where it's being rewritten in Rust. I don't know if Splat has something similar, but it would be nice if that was the case. We'll see. Most of the issue isn't Splat. Most of it is SPIM, in the way, just how it is organized, basically hitting, I think, every what's the right word? Every possible performance issue that Python has. All right, so that's some of the bad stuff. What I want to do before we get going is see if we can fix this collision detected error. I think it's in source st at. There's a couple things here. In general, the PSP version fixes a lot of bugs that we don't see in the PlayStation version of the game. And sorry, we don't see the bug fixes in the PlayStation version of the game. And some of those are uninitialized variables. So here we have this collision detected variable. It's going to be used here. It's going to be compared against %80 before it's ever assigned. And this is an issue because variables that are local to a function, if you do not specify a value in C, if you do not assign them a value, they get, the behavior is undefined. And once you hit undefined behavior, compiler writers say that they're effectively free to do anything. So will this variable, or will this condition ever be true? Yeah, it might be, actually, because collision detected might use a register, and that register might have a value in it, and that value could have this top bit of a of its first byte set, and that could be. We don't know. So that's why the compiler calls this out. Older versions of GCC don't call it out by default, and so we see that a lot of the PSP code has fixed a lot of these assignment bugs and will assign these. What I want to do is see if we can add a pragma. I don't know if this version of MetroWorks supports a pragma for disabling this warning, but I'd like to see, and if we can get this output a little cleaner, that'd be nice. So a lot of times compilers will have something called pragma, and in this case the PSP has one called suppress warnings, and these are just ways to tell the compiler to behave one way or another. So we're going to suppress the warnings, and we're going to turn that on, and then immediately after this line we're going to turn it off. And what I'm hoping is when we build this, that warning will go away. It hasn't. It's on 137. Nope. Let's try wrapping it around this. There's also a reset, which I'm guessing let's do that. Let's turn it to reset. Try it again. Yeah, unfortunately still getting that. So that's a bummer. Let's see where else this is used. It's assigned there. It's assigned there. Drat. I was hoping that pragma would work. That pragma is from documentation for a much later version of Code Warrior, which is another name for the MetroWorks compiler. What else? Let me try one more thing. No, I was hoping we'd find it. I think I've looked at this before and came to the same conclusion that there wasn't anything obvious to do here. Let me look one more time. Yeah, so this is an older version from 3.2. Let me see what version we're using here. For the PSP, we're using MetroWorks 1.3, so much older. Let me... Oh, suppress warnings. How about that? So maybe if I put the right pragma in, it would work. Fortunately, compilers will just ignore pragmas that they don't understand. Okay, let's try it one more time down here. Could be that off means on. No. Okay, one more, and we'll try to get it. I'm just Googling for these sometimes you can find another, probably not the best way to do this, but sometimes I'll look at strings. Strings is a Unix tool. It will take any ASCII, maybe UTF-8 text that it finds in a file, regardless of what it is, and it will try to extract it. These Windows programs might not be ASCII, though. They might be like UTF-16 or whatever Windows 16-bit. And so we can look for something like suppress warnings. And so suppress warnings is an option. Let's try wrapping the whole function in suppress warnings. Not the best idea, but maybe it'll help us. Hey, we did it. Okay, so next is let's see how we can ratchet this down to just the lines that we want. So that didn't work. So it does look like it needs to be at the function level. That's a bummer. So I'm going to make a note here. It would be nice. So modern compilers, you can actually tell it what warning or diagnostic, as they say, needs to be suppressed. And let's... All right. I'm satisfied at my warning. So that one thing down. Let's see if I can find... I don't have Discord open. All right, so the other thing that I thought would be interesting to look at is this register swap issue and how some of the assumptions that we make and tricks that we use aren't always don't always work. So let me move this somewhere and then we'll take a look at it. So register swaps are one of the more difficult things to do. Instructions a lot of times we can look at and try to determine what they are, and even when things are getting pushed to the stack, we know that there needs to be variables, or maybe we shouldn't have variables in certain places. But when the compiler chooses different registers for code that is otherwise sensible, too many tabs. There we go. That can be difficult. So here is the function. Josh was able to match it, and we'll look at his solution, which isn't necessarily the pragmatic solution. This is one of the functions that I believe is in that ps.elf or PSP main. So we have a relatively simple function. Depending on the return value of this other function, we're either going to run some logic down here, increment this global, and then use its previous value as an index. I wonder, let's try this. No tricks. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So simple. Let's fork it. Let me post this in Discord. No tricks. So here was the issue. Var S1 here was getting assigned the register S0. And what we want for S0 is getting assigned the register S1. And sometimes with 32-bit values or values that are all of the same size, we can reorder them, and MetroWorks will change them appropriately. But in this case, that wasn't working. The trick that I did was actually something that I tried a variant of earlier and didn't work. And I can't remember specifically what it was. I might have been doing, I don't remember. So I tried taking this expression out and reading again here, but then we get extra instructions. I guess we don't get an extra instruction. We get another read from S0 instead of a read from V0. Swapping these around. I tried changing the types of, instead of foo, which is just a struct, tried changing it to an array and all this other stuff. I tried sometimes changing the order of a condition and changing where the blocks fall. They end up compiling in the same order. That's more so the case with GCC than with MetroWorks. But sometimes it seems to happen with MetroWorks as well, and maybe that would give the right registers. We have a tool called the permuter, and the permuter will come in and add and remove things based on what's there. Let's look at, and I think that's what Josh's was. Yeah, he put this fake here, so this code will never get generated or never used because the return is here, and then there's no code gen even for this. And sometimes I would expect MetroWorks to generate code even though it can't be run. But that's a fake, just to get to compile correctly. GCC would compile that out. We don't need to worry about GCC in this case. It's MetroWorks. But yeah, we run into issues like this, and in this case, it turned out to be this post increment. The post increment sometimes, especially in an expression like this, I find it hard to follow. So the way the post increment works is we do this assignment first, then after that assignment is done, we increment and store the value back to this global. And that's enough to convince MetroWorks to use the right registers. The other way that it was written, this is what I tried earlier. I tried doing the increment afterwards, and it doesn't additional read, so we know we can't do that. So this is what M2C came up with. If we look at that decompilation, that's what it's doing there. But it's knowing, so there's a million ways to write this and have the equivalent logic, and finding the right way to produce the expected output is sometimes hard. Oh, that's fun. All right, let's get back to clock tower. Hey, Pepega Giga Chad, good to have you. Definitely. So I think we were working on, let's see if I can find, I can't remember. Oh, we had we have a match for the Cloak Knight. I need to do some symbol renaming for the Cloak Knight. And the PlayStation version is checked into my local branch, but I couldn't get the PSP version working, and it could be based on where the splits are. There's some... I will link decomp.me, but I don't know if coincidentally or otherwise I found the issue and posted it into Discord, but I will post it in chat as well. Twitch chat I can post to. Boy, let me reorient this. I can't post to YouTube chat at the moment. There you go. And you can go to the... So, like I said, it ended up being this post increment. That was the issue. You can go to family and look at Zynomo's original. Now that you know the solution, though, it's not as fun. All right, so was that was showing up, right? Yeah. Yeah, where we left it, I believe on Friday, was we had a yeah, I actually, it was kind of coincidence that it was found. The PSP version is matching in decomp.me, but not locally in my repo. I'm not going to keep working on it because I think it's just going to be a lot of tinkering and general frustration for me. What I am going to do is find other functions that are kind of in the same cluster, and then we'll work on some of those. So what I'm expecting here is a function that is like the outline for the Cloak Knight, and then one for his sword. So we also have this step towards function. The step towards function should be relatively simple. So let's knock that one out. It was matched by duplicate, and so I think we'll have something that we can base that on. I don't think it's a long function either. It came from Astral Sword. Hey, Nate. Hey, does it? Good to have you back. So let's look at E Cloak Knight, non-matchings, E Cloak Knight, Step Towards. I don't know that Step Towards is going to be the best name for this. It's just the name that came from a very similar looking function in the Spectral Sword entity. Oh, they have changed decomp.me again. All I really want is that I get a preset that gets saved per platform. Can't I just get that? We're not gonna have a harpy. Let's look at the signature for Step Towards. I don't know that I want to save it, but so not there. All right, let's go forward and see. So looking at the comment here, entity Spectral Sword primarily uses this as a method to smoothly rotate, but also to retract its outer ring after an attack by decreasing the radius. that sounds a lot like how Cloak Knight's sword works. I'm going to copy this implementation, and then we'll check it against the PSP and PlayStation. Let's rename our variables. And that is a perfect match. My guess, like I said, is that this is going to work for both. And we will make this just make a comment referencing this. This could potentially be pulled out into a common file. It may or may not be good for that. So let's just make a comment here. If these are the same, what's nice is we can reuse this. We don't have to namespace it or anything. And when we compile all these together, that'll still work. So let's make sure that that builds fine. Peppa Giga Chad says, the sword doesn't instantly rotate because the function that performs steps is limited by the frame limiter in the main loop. Let's look at the caller. I do need to fix and add an entity extension here. So we have a somewhat of a better idea. Interestingly, this is coming as an unsigned 8, which I don't think it should be. We make this an unsigned 16, and we need to go from 34 to 17, which thankfully works out to be the same thing. So yes, this would be limited by the frame. So this would get one chance to update per frame. And so the step arg here, if there was a need to rotate faster, then I think they would just increase that arg. In this case, it seems like it's fixed. Here it's a little slower though. So there are cases where it is rotating slower. Oh, and here it's faster. So this C0 is not quite 200, right? That's pretty high. Do I have a calculator open? I don't. $192. That was close. So that's getting pretty close. All right, so we have that. That could mean that this, I have been treating this as the Cloak Knight entity, but it's possible that this is the sword. I don't know. Let's try updating this for NZ1 PSP. I didn't move that into entity Cloak Knight. Let me find where that function is. I am going to try to make this static. We should see it's just needed here. All right, and that works fine on the PSP as well. We did have one Spectral Sword Aura that came up, so that's pretty much known. Oh, there was actually one other thing that I wanted to talk about, which was related to work that we did. Again, just kind of coincidentally, things overlapped between people working on the project. There wasn't any coordination with this at all. But we were working on harpies, and let me see if we had added these sound effects in Harpy Attack and Harpy Death, named them the same thing even, and Cinemax came through over the weekend, also added these. His is checked in, mine is still sitting here. Actually, is that the case? I don't know. He added an unused comment, but we know that it is used because it was here. Yeah, I hadn't gotten that one in yet. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. Happened to be in the same place at the same time. I rebased mine, and so my comment is gone, but kind of funny how that worked out. All right, so we're going to, let's just go to the next one down. Oh, Spectral Sword Aura is done. Oh, this is Spectral Sword. Why are all these functions done? So let's look at the next one and see what it is. Shorter one. Pepika Gigachad says, I don't remember where the harpy is. Harpy's in the clock tower. It's the flying guy who normally shoots daggers, but can also then shoot like a wave of feathers, and is super annoying. And then you have to deal with the Medusa heads as well, and so the combination of those two make these like very vertical rooms. Some of the worst in the game, I think. Peppa Gigachad, no US version and the EU PSP version. Should it return a bool? It's a 32-bit value, but you return true and false. True and false are, the size is not defined in C. Maybe you know that, maybe you don't. So what is the right size for true and false? Usually it's int. The values just need to be defined, and they have to equal 1 and 0. But what the width is up to the compiler and platform. All right, so a few things here. A relatively simple function, it looks like. Start with the einit or the arg to initialize entity. Might not have, this would actually be a good thing to put in my context. I do have that in the context, but M2C does not care. Let's fix these question marks, get rid of the function signatures. Let me just have the one more variable, animate entity. These are they on side 8s? Oh, should we put bool in? Oh, that's a good question. That's kind of the other issue with bool. You don't know what the size is, and we have to guarantee that the return value is 32-bit size, but it's probably fine. A lot of these decomp projects choose to use very explicit size return values. If this works, I would be fine with that. I would go as far as changing spectral swords as well. Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, and spectral sword already had it as a bool. My bad. Great suggestion. All right, so we need to know what the animate entity type is. And that is, I can't remember if it's a 16-bit or a 8-bit type. And of course, I can't find the signature. It's on side 8. These are indexes to frames. Okay, and then it looks like a few negative values here. So we're taking arg0, we're going to rename that to self. And then we're looking at some entity that's one before where we are an entity size is BC. So this is going to be 8 bits in, or 8 bytes into bits, into the next, or the previous entity. We'll call this one Reeve. And then we'll take a look at the entity struct. So we want B calculator BC minus B4, that should be 8. So velocity X. And then velocity Y. And then this is going to be pos X and pos Y. It should be, I think, low. The endianness is going to get me, though. We'll try and see what it is. We'll try high. One more, 33, unknown 96. So now this is yet another entity back, and this time it's in the entity extension. So what is likely happening here is we have the Cloak Knight, we have the Aura, and then we have the Sword. Maybe not in that order, but all contiguous together in the entity array. And whoever was programming this knew that that's how those would be allocated, and chose to do it that way. So 96 minus BC. Oh, no. Duh. My bad. We're at offset 26 here, which is the entity ID. Easier than I thought. And this isn't bad. We just have one junky area here. Right around this area. We're going to clean up a bunch of this anyway, though. So it won't make a huge difference. It looks like I did do a good job getting my offsets. So the velocities were shifting down and squaring them. I don't think So I think we can use fix to I for this. And I don't think that they need to be in a separate variable, but it looks like they might be. So let's name temp S0. Call this velocity X. Temp S0 underscore 2. I'm going to change this to square and then fix to I velocity X. And that's looking a little better. Then we can get rid of this temp 0 underscore 2. And then I think the same thing is going to work out for velocity Y as well. So we're going to do the same thing, square, fix to I, velocity Y. And that is a match that way, but we'll do a little more cleanup. So what is happening here? Velocities are Konami 1616 fixed value, so 16 bits for the integer portion, 16 bits for the fractional portion. We want to convert that to just the integer portion, and that's what the fix to I does. So we have a normal integer in the 16-bit range. Then we're taking the Pythagorean distance between using the velocities, basically. So we have a vector going in a particular direction, and we want to see how far that's going to take us, what the total distance is. And so we have the Pythagorean theorem here. We're squaring those values. And then we want to, I think the shift by, no, I guess not. I was thinking the shift by 4 was to convert it to a PlayStation fixed, but that can't be quite right. Maybe it is. Because ultimately rotate, I think, is a PlayStation fixed number, which is 22 bits, no, 20 bits for the integer and 12 bits for the fractional portion. A little strange the way that it's set up, though. But that's a match, but I want to get rid of some of these other ones that probably aren't necessary. Get rid of the casts if I can, and anything extra here that is not necessary. The artan, oh yeah, the artan is definitely a PlayStation fixed. I think all of these can go together. I don't know if there's a lot of value in doing that, though. That's not working out. We'll grab the PSP version and check that. Temp V1 is our other one. Yeah, we can definitely get rid of that. And so what are we doing? We're taking the velocity of whatever our related entity is and basically using it to calculate the step towards. We can go into the game and see what's happening here. The other thing we can do is check that this entity ID is the right entity ID. It's kind of funny that we do a lot of calculations based on that previous entity, and then finally check that it was the right one that we wanted. I guess nothing really happens. But we might do a bunch of math that was unnecessary. That's kind of funny. So we're going to look at source st nz1, the nz1 header. I don't have an entity ID for this yet, but I'm pretty sure we think 3B is the Bloke Knight. And that would make this entity 3C. So we'll worry about that later. Let's go grab the PSP version. We have to find a unique value here. The 3B actually might be one of the better values, or the flags. The flags, not quite. The flags are going to get broken up into two 16-bit values. One of those values is going to be 2000. The other one is going to be 20. I don't think that's unique enough. So let's look for the 3B in ASM PSPU ST NZ1 non-matchings. Make that recursive. So we actually have a couple functions in here. Oh, duh. So the function that we matched before, it's going to be this 6B8 is the one that I couldn't get to compile quite right. And so we're going to be looking at this function right after that one. So we're going to take this implementation, see how far off we are. We're missing a variable. That's somewhat unique. These are out of order. So these are getting pulled into separate variables, but which is fine. This version tells us that that doesn't happen until down here. And these end up being they get assigned. Oh, temp S3. Yeah, that's sign 16. It's almost as if these are getting cast. But not there. I see. This is, yeah, we have seen this before in this area. I think we're doing an extra assignment with a sign extension. Make sure our registers are fine. That looks fine. So here the shift is happening too many times. So these are getting assigned, it looks like they're getting shifted outside. So kind of nice to have these where they were, but it doesn't seem to work that way. It does look like there is another variable, and this is the one that was missing. So we're going to call this just S4 for now. And I think we're getting, let's try this. This looks like it's a plus equals. Maybe this will give us what we want. Get rid of that. So there is a move to another variable. I'm going to try getting that first. We'll call this var S4. Temp implies that it's kind of an intermediate value. Okay, we're missing a move. So let's get rid of the multiplication, the shift. So then we're going to do the multiplication here. And it looks like, and we'll do the shift. So now we have we're missing a sign extend. Let's try making var S4 a sign 16. I don't think that's going to work out very well. So what are we missing here? So going back to S1. S1 is the same thing right now as our S4. This isn't cool. Let's try it this way. Yes, this isn't quite right. All right, now we have an additional. So, is Varus 4 a sine 16? Maybe it was a sine 16 the whole time. And then maybe all this is actually together, and I'm just a fool. Let's try it. Because then basically all the math happens in the 32-bit domain, and the assignment isn't. Yeah, the square root kind of screws it up. So it looks like the square root, though. We do have this temp S0. Let's try that. So that looks mostly okay. A little strange. Let's see how that looks on the PlayStation. Not super confident. The multiply here is backwards. Mathematically, it doesn't matter, but it's generating the opposite instructions. Hopefully that's all that was over here. So we still have some register issues. Let's try reordering these and see if that does anything. That looks like all it was just the order of those. So we have a match here. The reuse of this temp S0 _3, not really something I like, but it matches. The return here, we're going to replace that with a break. And there is a few globals here. We'll have to either map those. That's probably the best thing to do. It may be worth going through here and putting a return instruction and see which one of these. So this entity doesn't really do anything. So it doesn't have any hit detection. It just kind of moves around. So let's do that. Let me open DuckStation up and we'll see if we can figure out which one specifically this is. DuckStation is not showing up in my list. Try one more time. I just can't. I can't alphabetical order. Skill issue. Throw this up here. The controller plugged in. Nope. All right, we're gonna go to the debugger. We are not currently in in the clock tower, so we do need to get over to the clock tower first. Come on, you can wing smash. There we go. Bonk. Oh, wing smashing is supposed to be easy. But yet I can't do it. Here, look at that iframe manipulation. Take that, Sword Lord. There we go. This is for Pepaga. There's the harpy destroying me. All right, so the Cloak Knight is up above. So I do want to update this function before that. The momentum that those fleamen have is annoying. So I do want to disable this function now. And let me go grab the no-op. I'm looking at the wrong, looking at the PSP version. All right, this is the, I got the right one. I think the no-op, or sorry, the jump return, that's a little different. So I'm going to put the, change this function to be a jump return. So immediately when the function's called, it just returns. And so whatever that entity was, we should not see it anymore. It shouldn't even show up. Because the initialization won't happen. Oh, I mean, all three parts of it are there. All three parts of Cloak Knight are there. Let me just confirm. That's what it was. I didn't expect that. Make sure that okay, so we are hitting this function immediately. We are doing the jump return. I didn't put a no-op after it. That was a mistake. I should do that. Let's manipulate this. What it's doing is storing the stack, the S2 value to the stack, so it's not a huge deal. It could be worse. But yeah, we have the aura, and we have the. So let's try killing this guy, I guess, and see. My analog stick sensitivity, or like the dead spot in it. Let's do this. Should have made a save point right before that and then restored yeah, the dead zone in my analog stick makes it seem like I'm always pressing up. Yeah, I didn't see anything different about that. So let's kill him again, and then I'll re-enable that breakpoint and see if we're still hitting it. It is still being hit. That could be because the state machine is no longer working. I can fix that by putting the correct instructions back, and I happen to know what those are. So let's do that. So EOFF. I'm doing the right thing here. EOFF BD27 and then 1800B2AF. That's how easy MIPS programming is. Now, when we go back, we should see, I guess, what, if anything has changed. Oh, is it his cape? Is that what we got rid of? Let's try it again. Let's try it again. I think we just got rid of his cape. There's no, DuckStation doesn't give you any indication that this is like selected and that you're going to be typing there. It looks like it. I do think the cape may be a separate entity. Let's see. He has no cape. All right, well, we know what it is. Very important entity. A lot of this, and maybe it's because I'm a lazy programmer and just don't have the vision, but somebody came through and they decided, you know what Cloak Knight really needs? Cloak Knight really needs a cape. We can't have him not have a cape. Oh, and by the way, that needs to be animated. And for reasons, maybe the art department came back and said, okay, we have the cape for the Cloak Knight. And we know it has to be animated, but guess what? We can't have it as part of the sprites for the Cloak Knight. It has to be separate. And when the Cloak Knight moves, that's why they did it, because the Cloak Knight sprite doesn't change. That dude, he just sits there. He's one static sprite. And then the guy who got assigned the cape, he's like, I'm going all out. I am going all out. This cape is gonna flutter back and forth. You thought this was gonna be simple? No. This dude's gonna show up one place in the whole game, maybe twice, and his cape is gonna be immaculate. Screw you, Iga. I'm getting paid. That's documented. That conversation actually happened. Sorry. Really bad, really bad. So let's get DuckStation out of there. And so we're gonna add some symbols now. We know that this is the Cloak Knight cape. Oh, the Cloak Knight cloak? That's why he's named that. He's like, let's have a flying knight up there, and then that guy's like, what about this? What if that dude has a cloak? A cloak? Yeah, it's kind of like a cape. You can make it red like Superman. That's what was going on. So we're gonna map these symbols and then move on to something else. Actually, R611 says that was the programmer whose soul wasn't crushed yet. New on the job, starry-eyed. I'm gonna make a difference. Look at this cloak that I came up with. Nobody's seen a cloak like this in a video game before. What's a cloak? What do you mean, what's a cloak? It's a cape. All right, so we're a little slap happy. We're gonna call this entity cloak night cloak. And our PSP equivalent was 480. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I got my symbols correct. And back in decomp.me, I'm gonna rename these scratches. The other thing that's missing here, it's probably worth doing these two, is adding these symbols, all these symbols to add, and then we need the cloak animation. So we'll do those first. Nate says, have you ever tried to write your own game using MIPS like Pong? No, I really should. What did I do with MIPS? So when I was in college a long time ago, MIPS was actually the instruction set that we used for computer architecture, and so we had to design our own CPU that had a ALU and all this other stuff in it, a basic set of instructions. And so we were designing a MIPS compatible CPU, so an instruction decoder, blah, 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 with all that stuff in some like VHDL or some other discrete logic language. And if you took the second version, the subsequent class, which wasn't the computer science or computer engineering majors had to take it, but I was a software engineer, so we didn't have to take it. If you did take it though, then you got to burn your chip to an EEPROM, or your chip design to an EEPROM. And they wrote a Space Invaders game and had all the logic for like controlling an analog video. So this was way before HDMI. So we had VGA or composite video signals that we could manipulate. And so they went as far as doing that. So had I stayed in that tract, I would have had the opportunity to. I did something more stupid than that, though. I decided to take electrical engineering classes instead and fry my brain. And I've never... A lot of times I see people make... I'm just updating the scratch with these symbols. I see people make, going to get a clean build first, make sure I didn't screw anything up like that. So we have a reference to this already. So we can't just call this the Cloak Knight Cloak, but I'm not going to update it yet. Interesting to know, though. Let's just call this Cloak Knight then. Yeah, I do think so. It might be interesting to look at, and I haven't done this yet. Did I talk about the? Yeah, I think I talked about the debug familiar that we have. It might be interesting to look at that and see. So that is written in C, but how it's set up. I know that the arbitrary code execution stuff is a little bit different, but you could write your program in C first and generate the MIPS instructions, and then use your arbitrary code execution to inject those instructions. And that might be a slightly easier way to think about it. MIPS isn't bad as far as programming languages go. You just have to make sure that you're not destroying the stack and other things along the way. Hey, Dark False Joker, good to have you. Yeah, and the logic for Snake is pretty well documented, and it exists in a lot of languages and games or systems. So that's probably how I would go about it, but that's because I'm lazy. And that seems like a nice lazy way to do it. Write it in an easy language. And then, all right, so we're going for the PlayStation version. I forgot that I renamed this. Fix my scratch. Okay, that worked. Fixing my scratch. And so hold on to your butts. This is always the hard part. Is it going to work on the PSP or not? I have a good feeling that it's going to work, but I've been wrong before. Okay, we need a better header. Hopefully that's all it was. That's all it was. All right, so we got this going. We got the cloak of the Cloak Knight. So the remaining ones in here, we have two more. One should be this. Actually, my guess is that this is the sword, the top one, because the sword is what does anything interesting. Is there a collider here? There is no collider. Huh, maybe not. Okay. Let's look at the size of the rest of these. So 7-1C, which is the last one, that is by far the biggest. So that probably is the sword at the end there. This C5-8, oh, it could be, I could be wrong. C5-8 is on the smaller side too. The aura actually may be the bigger one. Oh, but the aura actually should come next. So it does look like the sword is going to be the last one, and it is a long function. I think we'll do that. Let's disable both of those and see what disappears as we do that. And then I think I'll call it a day. I'm going to keep that symbol table open actually, because then we can name those symbols. I appreciate, so Dizzy every once in a while goads me into doing something that I really don't want to do because I'm, again, for the third time in the stream, I'm lazy. And I don't want to do work, I don't want to think. But sometimes doing that work and thinking is what is the difference between getting something done and not. And so I appreciate everybody in chat convincing me to do things that I don't want to do. Is there a chance that it might share some code with the sword familiar? There is, but the major thing that it does, that the sword familiar does, is rotate, but the sword familiar rotates in such a strange way compared to basically everything else in the game that maybe not. The other thing that the Cloak Knight sword does that that the sword familiar does is kind of select a target and then go after it, and so that logic actually might be pretty similar. And I did most of the sword familiar, so we could look at that as well and see. It's been 9 months or so since I did the sword familiar, so we'll see if I remember anything. All right, so we're gonna replace this function. Let me get the debugger in a more reasonable place. So I'm going to take what's there and I'm going to return it with a no-op. Which one is this? The immediate return in no-op is the same instructions for any function, but the first two instructions are going to be unique for each function. I typed a 9 and I wanted an 8. Right, so we'll go up there, and so he has no aura. Okay, so we know that that function is the aura function. And that aligns with what what dupes found on the PSP. And there are spectral swords here, so I'm a little surprised. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes when you're matching a new overlay, we have a bunch of processes for trying to figure out, or if you're Canadian, processes for trying to figure out what functions we've seen before and then automatically give them names. And sometimes we come across a function or we come across multiple functions that have the same structure or look identical, but we can only give one of those functions a particular symbol name. So it could just be that this came first in the list of functions that was being evaluated and it was given that spectral aura, even though the spectral sword aura function does exist later on. And we'll see if we can find it later on. I think that's what isn't that what the knights, the big sword knights, when you kill them and then their sword, isn't that a spectral sword? Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong guy. All right, so we found that, and now let's, the aura's not going to do anything. Let's look at this B71C. Thanks, Nate, I appreciate it. And being around Mod has made me smarter as well. Being around all of you has definitely improved my state of being, my wellness. Oh, I didn't want to breakpoint. And I appreciate everybody who joins me every day. All right, so I want to make sure this is a little odd that it starts at offset C. A lot of times there's padding to get that too. Something a little more even, that's fine, doesn't really affect anything. All right, so now we've disabled whatever this is, and this is either going to be the sword or it's going to be the knight, and I think it's going to be the sword. So let's see. He has no sword! Ah, suck it, Spectral Knight. He can... Not Spectral Knight, Cloak Knight. He can still hurt me. But not as bad as he used to. Yeah, so the sword is... does have the most code in this section. You can only take 5. Oh, but I only have 4! Still has his magnificent cloak. There is one function missing here, but it might just be the generic explosion function. When you kill him, there's an explosion. It might just be the generic one. So let's add the symbol for the sword, and then we'll call it a day. So that does mean that there probably is a split here. I looked at a tracker, the tracker for familiars. I only saw the ones that are used in the game. No. Let me, so I think I have a JP copy of the disc. Give me 1 second, we'll take a look. I think that there's more familiars. More familiar files, but let me double check. I know it's like mundane, but adding symbols is like one of the most gratifying things, I think, or decompiling. Let's see if I have JP extracted. So we should have a servant directory. Yeah, we do have So US only goes up to Servant 4, and we get 5 and 6. Oh, yeah, I called it JP10. JP10 is actually JP 1.0. There are 3 versions of JP. Yeah, and so we don't have. And let's look at this. There is the HD version as well. It's going to be. These are lowercase. So this is the. Oh, these are here on the PSP version. So the HD version of the game is the JP version of the game. But on the PSP disc. And it's used. It's referenced in odd ways. I don't think it's actually used, though. But it does appear like on. It ships with all the versions of the PSP version, so the Requiem collection and the mobile games as well. But that. So those are there. So we could add them. And basically we'd be decompiling the JP version. Oh, you're right, they are. I didn't realize that. Let's look at let's do an MD5. I like I'm used to using MD5, but Shasam is more fun to say. So what I want to do is look at both US and JP10. And they are different. The ones on the PSP will be the same as the ones in the HD. That's interesting. I did not realize that. That they were on the US disc. That is interesting too. The HD version is not the same. So I only have a JP 1.0 disc. I don't have the 1.1 or 1.2 disc. So I haven't generated hashes for these. If you want to see some things, we have a wiki, soten.fun, and you can look at the game versions. Nope. There's an overlays wiki. It's not referenced off of this. And do I have... So... Sorry. Scrolling. PSP EU has the same version, but yeah, these are different. Actually, it looks like all the familiars are different. The first one is JP 1.0. So things with the same color are the same. So JP 1.0 and the HD version, mostly I think of as the same, but yeah, there are a few of these. So the test stages, reverse center castle, the debug room, and then all of the familiars are different. And the way weapons are done is different between the PSP and the PlayStation, so that's why those show up differently. Interesting. So this is, again, just kind of a aside. the HD version we think represents like how they were testing, HD meaning hard drive, how they were testing, or hard disk, the PSP version as they were developing it. There's some references to files on a hard disk as opposed to optical media like there was on the PlayStation, but for the most part all the stages are unchanged. So the differences that do exist are a little interesting. So we'll have to look at that when most of the reverse castle hasn't started yet. But we should add, yeah, we should add for the GitHub page, these are only PlayStation. So US PlayStation. So we wouldn't have them listed here regardless. All right. Yeah, that is interesting. I agree. Thanks for pointing that out. Well, that's it. Go to sudden.z.dev. You'll find a link to Discord and a link to GitHub. Appreciate everybody working on the project. Appreciate everybody showing up in chat. And I'll be back tomorrow, and I should be at the regular plain old time. Adios.